Spectrovision Radio.
Hey friends, I want to tell you real quick about another project I've been working on called Anomaly. It's an audio series that's this pretty unique blend of storytelling and guided meditation. Basically, as you listen, you become this character in a ruined land that needs your magic to heal. I didn't write this thing, but my company, Voltage, did a lot of the editing, music, and sound design. And I can honestly say I haven't heard anything like it. Immersive, transportive, and also, yes, award-winning. Specifically, the Signal Award Listener's Choice for Most Innovative Audio Experience. We talk about meditation a lot on our show, but whether or not you consider yourself a person who meditates, I think you'll really dig the magical world of Anomaly. It's sort of like those apps that make you feel like you're being chased by zombies to motivate you to do cardio, except significantly less stressful. Actually, the opposite of stressful. Okay, it was a bad comparison. Anyway, if I've piqued your interest, you can find out more at seekanomaly.com and use the code MAGIC to get 60% off your first month of full access. Oh, and by the way, Anomaly is spelled with an I-E, not a Y. But also you can find a link in the description, of course. Okay, that's my pitch. On to the show. Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, the biggest podcast in the universe, where we talk about all the things they said weren't real. My name is Jordan, and I'm joined by my gracious and beautiful co-hosts, Tom and Mallory.
Hey!
Hi, babies.
You guys sound very awake. Today,
Yeah.
we're thick with UFOs today. First, we've got a short update on the UFO-Tuber. That's what I'm calling him, James. An update on those photographic telescope plates from the mid-20th century that we talked about in an earlier episode, and Enigma's recent USO report. But first, let's do some plugs, guys. Let's plug some things.
Yeah.
Let's plug.
Yes.
Let's say. I will say this. We got a lot of views on our YouTube video from the last one. I think it's because it had 3i Atlas in the name, and like everyone is always Googling 3i Atlas and like looking up news on 3i Atlas in the YouTube. And so I think we got a little bit of that love and like lots of really great comments and really nice words. And thank you is what I want to say. Thank you to all those people.
Wait, who commented? What do you mean on YouTube?
People commented on YouTube, Tom.
What?
You should look it up.
No, every time I know it's so sad. Every time I go on our YouTube channel, it's like 2 views.
Yeah, no.
I'm like, I'm not going in this
We've
room.
been very neglectful of our
This
YouTube
party
channel.
is dead. I'm not staying.
Okay, it's funny. I didn't even know that until I was on my own YouTube account, just like scrolling as you do, you know, when you have like a 15 minutes of I want to eat something and take a break, and I'm like looking on YouTube, and there's our video, and it's like 1,000 views, and I was like, what? We've never gotten 1,000 views on our video before. And I look at it, and I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of comments, and so I like responded to some comments. And
Also,
anyway,
it's a YouTube comment section.
yeah.
Why would you open that door that says,
Because it
dead,
looked
do not
like
enter,
people
it's
were
a YouTube-
nice.
Were they
People were
nice?
being nice to us, Tom.
Were they?
Yeah, they were being nice to us.
Okay,
we didn't
That
get
is
one
always
single
nice.
mean comment.
Wow.
You
What?
know, that's pretty magical, but we can't let that be our barometer. we gotta
No.
We gotta invite it
No.
all. Yeah, like
Yeah.
the thing I've learned, if I've learned anything from existing online, is that you shouldn't read comments at all.
Don't read
But
them.
when we're at the beginning, we're just trying to figure out how to like connect with people, and I get why we're doing it right now. That's all I'm
Okay.
saying. And for our listeners to understand how real this journey is, we're 34 episodes in, and we still are trying to get a foothold. We're trying to find our people, I guess.
Yeah, we're trying to find our people.
Pursuant to that, I will say that the comments on our Substack and the comments on our Spotify and the comments on iTunes podcasts are some really, really sweet people, some really
Fascinating.
engaged,
Yeah.
good-natured, just the very people you want commenting. And and seriously, and now if they're rocking up on YouTube, good for us. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The people who listen to this podcast are, and I think I'm qualified to say this, are the best people.
In the
they're the
world.
best people.
In the whole world.
In the whole world.
Yeah.
In the whole universe,
That's-
actually.
Sure.
It's a competition, and you're winning, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important for them to know that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to present the facts today. All right. And I'm going to try to not say anything else at the moment.
All right.
So
primed.
we've got another week's worth of updates because there's usually at least one video per day because James, the YouTuber who claims to, for anybody who hasn't heard the previous episodes, the previous 2 episodes, I've mentioned this man who claims to be in possession of a UFO that he discovered himself and brought back to his house. He got a lead blanket to cover it up once he realized it was radioactive because he ordered a Geiger counter and it took a couple days to come. Anyway, the latest in the updates, he posted on October 22nd. The title of the video was Something Following Me in My Car, No Joke. He took the video going 80 miles per hour on a dark highway at 5:40 a.m. And it's him freaking out in a car because there is something circling his car and shrieking, and it's terrifying him. And so it's a pretty interesting video. And I won't lie, it's very difficult to hear the shrieks. But around 3:16 in the video, which is about 8.5 minutes long, I heard something that sounded like a scream.
Hold on, I have questions.
Yep.
Do you see anything?
You don't see anything, but he describes what he saw. He was like, it hit the car. He describes it as a giant black bat circling the car and shrieking.
Very Mothman.
I know. And he
it was
doesn't know
doing
that
this-
until 2 videos later when like the commenters started, or at least,
Mothman.
okay, the way he's presenting is he's like, I've been reading up
Right.
about Mothman because people have been, so this is the narrative that's being presented.
Because
at the very
Mothman
least.
chased those kids while they raced away in their car at high speed. Well, high speed
Yeah.
for 1966.
These were his
Well,
words.
that's really scary.
Dark-skinned, winged bat creature human is what he called it. It was
Okay,
a
demon.
dark-skinned, winged bat creature human. And he said,
That's-
I don't
that's
know if
demon.
it's skin or if it's hair. And I was like, that sounds awful. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah. Who wants a dark-skinned winged bat creature human menacing them on the highway? I mean, that's just too many words. So you do hear
Right.
one thing one time and see no things.
Yes, because he like tries to open both of his windows, but you're hearing a lot of like car sounds and clanking and wind, because he's going really fast. And he's like, I don't know if you can hear that. And I didn't hear anything. But around 3:16, I heard something. Granted, I'm a video editor. I know how easy it is to put a sound effect in. It's not hard. You can do it with your phone. But it sounded scary. Like if it were real, super scary. So again, you kind of have to keep that Schrodinger's cat thing going on, at least for now. The next video the next day is him trying to prove or just doing a test to show everybody what his windshield wipers sound like because people are like, oh, it's just the windshield wipers. He's like, it's not the same noise. And he also shows you that there was a strange scratch on his car. And it is kind of strange, but he's able to wipe it off. He says it comes off like tar. And then in the video he posts the next day, he just says a lot of, basically he's like, another boring video, and that's what most of the week's updates are. But he said a lot of weird things are happening in my life that weren't happening before, like the Mothman thing. And then the other thing that he mentioned was that he's been having these like campfire nights with a friend in his yard, and there are sometimes animal noises that sound like they're being made by humans in his vicinity. That's all.
That seems mean-spirited.
It does seem mean-spirited. So the man's just like either peak paranoid or telling us the story of somebody being peak paranoid, but there's a lot going on. Let's say we have like full credulity and we're going to believe it all for a second. How interesting that you could get a UAP and then start to have more paranormal things happen in your life. And who knows what that means?
Well, this
Some
is
kind of
consistent-
share
I mean,
in
that's the
reality.
narrative, right?
That's the pattern.
Yeah.
This is
Right.
now feeling very John Keel,
Right?
where it's like, oh, you looked at it, okay, now you got its attention. It being the trickster, I don't know what.
The mystery. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, gosh, I'm a little worried about this guy. Anyway,
I mean, it's possible that we might watch someone have a breakdown, He really wants Joe Rogan to get a hold of this. He keeps bringing it up. He keeps saying, I think he's a good guy. I want to give it to Joe Rogan. I mean, what a wonderful character. That's what I'm saying. As a storyteller, I'm gonna keep being interested. So I'll just keep you posted. I won't stop.
That's how we're gonna end season 1 is where Joe Rogan appears in his doorway, and maybe it's like, I don't know, like a robotic Joe Rogan. We just don't know.
Joe
I
Rogan's
heard you wanted to see me. Roll credits. Wow. Okay.
Fantastic.
That's what we got. Dark-skinned, winged bat creature human.
I want to update 2 stories we covered this year because we've been around long enough to issue updates, which I love.
Woohoo.
34 episodes in. The first is about a study conducted by VASCO, which stands for the Vanishing and Appearing Sources During a Century of Observations Project. Definitely not part of the EAC or Elegant Abbreviation Coalition. Anyway. They released a pre-publication version of a study which searched through digitized photographs taken by the Palomar Observatory between 1949 and 1957, a time before any man-made satellites had been launched, to look for what they called transients or temporary bright spots in the sky, many of which correlated to nuclear weapons tests. And we talked about that pre-publication several months ago. Now that paper's been published in the journal Scientific Reports and has thus become the first peer-reviewed document demonstrating a statistical link to a long-standing UFO popular legend, namely that the first notable appearances by aliens or NHIs or whatever you want to call them were linked to our emergent and potentially annihilatory nuclear capabilities. To be specific, the VASCO team compiled a data set spanning almost 3,000 days to compare the dates with transient sightings with the dates of above-ground nuclear tests and found that the UAPs were 45% more likely to be observed within 1 day of any given test. Quote, our findings provide additional empirical support for the validity of the UAP phenomenon and its potential connection to nuclear weapons activity, contributing data beyond eyewitness reports, the researchers wrote. And the reason I bring this up is because even though nothing in the published paper is different from its pre-publication version, apart from the peer review part, everything has changed. This information is now filtering down through the public consciousness. Outlets like CNN are covering it. And so it's another bright line drawn under the reality that UAPs demonstrably exist, at least in some ways, conform to their popular image, which is mind-blowing. This has only been, it hasn't even been 10 years, since the New York Times came out with that, oh, by the way, UFOs are real thing. And speaking of the UFO part of Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, I wanted to mention the convergence of 2 other segments we did, namely one about USOs, or unidentified submerged objects, and the other about the Enigma app, which you'll remember crowdsources videos of UFO sightings that normal people take and compiles the resulting data. As of August, which was, I think, around the time we covered Enigma, the app has logged over 9,000 USO sightings within 10 miles of the U.S. coastline or large bodies of water. These objects have been spotted hovering above, emerging from, or descending into the water. One smartphone video shows glowing green objects traveling just beneath the surface of the ocean. Retired Navy Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, for one, is not thrilled about this development. Quote, pilots, credible observers, and calibrated military instrumentation have recorded objects accelerating at rates and crossing the air-sea interface in ways not possible for anything made by humans, he wrote in a 29-page report released in 2024. The fact that unidentified objects with unexplainable characteristics are entering U.S. water space and the DoD is not raising a giant red flag is a sign that the government is not sharing all it knows about all domain anomalous phenomena, he wrote. But I guess the consolation is at least we have technology like Enigma to compile that data ourselves.
Now, can you clarify, those 9,000 reports were not just in the last 3 months. Those were, I think, over the course of the years that Enigma has been gathering
as of August. I went back and checked that. I was like, since August? That's nuts. But no, it is. I don't know when the app was released, but it is as of August, I think, is the current.
It's still a couple years old at most, right?
Yeah, it's only a few years. Like, they haven't been gathering data for more than a few years, right?
That sounds right to me. This goes hand in hand with a congressman just blurting out that, he knows of 6 undersea USO bases.
Yeah, that he's been to, that he vacations at one of them.
I don't think he went that far. If he did, it would be easier to dismiss, but I don't know. We should check his iPhone to see if he took pictures.
Yeah.
God help us.
That would be a leak I'd pay to see. Mal, what do you think about this?
I feel like I'm having a little bit of I don't know. I think my question is around the idea that if we're gathering what feels like decently definitive evidence that UFOs, well, obviously UFOs exist. We're just having that regularly confirmed. And of course they don't just exist, but they actually are. Like, I don't, you know what? Cut this part because I can't figure out how to say it, but I'm just saying.
Oh, it's staying in.
UFOs have always existed. Things that we didn't understand always exist, and that's all that UFO means. But we're saying that UFOs, as in aliens, or something that is not of this earth, is around. And
non-human something.
Non-human something.
Some non-human something is actually here, and it seems to be around, especially when we might be self-destructing or doing things that are self-destructive. It's making the spiritual part of my brain turn on, and I'm just thinking about grace. Like, there's this thing I always say to friends, especially when they're getting in their heads about love and romance and dating, and it always makes me feel better, which is that you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And it's almost like, how collaborative is this? How much can they affect whether or not we self-destruct ourselves? Like, we turn on these nuclear bombs and like destroy the planet. Can we say the wrong thing to the right person, or are they going to catch us every time? It just looks like some form of grace to me, but it also could be just a totally different thing. That's just the first thing that popped into my head.
The government entities, once they got involved or once they admitted that they got involved, have treated this like a threat, right? And because the capabilities of these phenomena exceed our own. We can't do jack shit about these things. And in fact, there are multiple credible reports of them rolling up to missile silos and stuff and just shutting them off. Now, that freaks those guys out, but it's not like they are killing people, committing mass murder. It's more just like they're going like, don't do that thing that's really stupid. And in fact, we can prevent you from doing that thing that's really stupid. Now, so that's hopeful, right? The abduction narratives are not nice, but that's hopeful.
I guess this is probably a pretty good segue into my take, because that does represent sort of a segment of the experiences that we hear about, or the accounts that we hear about, is that there's this sort of non-interventionist, except for, there seem to be signaling like, hey, we're here. We can turn off your nukes.
Right.
So I'm going to start by saying, once again, Enigma is delivering exactly what they promised. Rigorous data collection and meta-analysis. The crucial point here is that their stated objective is to gather information, not to interpret it, which is good. We need that. Tom, you've celebrated that, I think, very appropriately in the past, and we should continue to celebrate that and encourage it, and we want more of that. But also, someone should be doing something with this data. And as I perused all of the media coverage about this report, it is dismayingly obvious to me that no one on Earth is actually doing anything with it, or at least not in a way that the public could recognize in any easy way. It's just more grist for the content mill, more slop for the novelty chasers. And let's be honest, that includes pretty much everyone, including me, a lot of the time. All of the articles and takes and videos or whatever follow pretty much the same exhausted cliches. Big if true. What does it mean? No one knows what these are. It might be nothing. And then, of course, there are the comically misinformed takes, like this one article with the headline, Sunday was banner day for UFO sightings, and goes on to claim that October 26th may go down as one of the craziest days for unidentified objects we've seen, assuming that the report represented sightings that day, which it didn't, which we've already made clear.
Bummer.
So, yeah, right. So such is the state of our information ecosystem, right? Like this is the kind of thing people produce and consume. So what's the problem here? I mean, aside from the hilariously misinformed reactions to the report, I've only been looking into this topic for a couple of years now, but already I've gotten this undeniable sense of wheel spinning. Like the project of trying to understand this phenomenon is a muscle car suspended in the air, revving its engine, and everyone gets excited and the motor roars, but the car never goes anywhere. There's nothing wrong with Enigma's report. In fact, it's great. It's really good, valuable data. The problem is that just like all the other really good, valuable data that intrepid researchers and investigators have been gathering for at least the past 80 years, it doesn't seem to get us anywhere. And now I'm asking, what would it mean to go somewhere? This brings me to Reed Summers, who seems to be trying very hard to get the rubber back onto the road. I recently heard him for the first time in an interview with Andy McGrillen on That UFO podcast, who I'm currently trying to get onto our show, by the way. And Reed's approach to this whole topic was like a splash of ice cold water to the face. By way of quick introduction, Reed Summers writes and speaks on the UAP/NHI phenomenon, teaching a logical and comprehensive approach for examining the presence and activity of non-human intelligence and our human future in a universe of intelligent life. He previously worked for 12 years at the National Center for Atmospheric Research and holds a BA in Communication and Rhetoric from the University of Washington. But what sets him apart isn't credentials, it's his approach and methodology. He's committed to logic, analytical insight, and big picture thinking, specifically when it comes to the activities and agenda of NHI encounters that have been happening for at least the past 100 years. His goal is to put whatever data we have to use in unraveling the mystery of NHI intent. That's a really important word. After spinning around inside a chaos of competing theories about UAPs, I'm speaking personally, ancient aliens, interdimensional beings, time travelers, benevolent space brothers, demonic entities, like what Reed's framework really felt like finally getting off the merry-go-round. This is primarily thanks to his insistence that we actually can make progress, that we can move from entertaining possibilities to zeroing in on probabilities and then start drawing open-ended conclusions. According to Reed, the questions that actually matter are, 1, how should we interpret the activities of non-human intelligences observed in the world? 2, what are the most probable explanations for their motives and intentions? 3, what are the larger implications of contact for individuals, society, and humanity as a whole? And 4, how should we respond, both personally and collectively? All of this is, of course, fraught and complicated. And when something isn't easy, it's tempting to say, well, maybe it isn't important. But if there is, as Reed suggests, and as I think many decades of evidence supports, and as we all sort of agree and have been saying, some sort of NHI intervention in human affairs that is actually happening, then what could be more important than our response to that? Especially because maybe the fact that the muscle car of our progress in this domain has been spinning its proverbial wheels is by design, and maybe not our design, since we're probably the less advanced party in this dynamic. Consider how many reports of encounters with non-human intelligences include some sort of emotional or psychological manipulation, like James Barber's account and how he described being overwhelmed by feelings of love as he's piloting a helicopter carrying this egg-shaped object.
Once it was just me and that object in between the pick and the drop site, there's about 20 miles in between, I felt like something was inside of me. I felt like I was possessed by the most beautiful spirit I'd ever been possessed by. And
was it loving?
It was loving. But there was a sense of sadness at the same time. And
Had you ever had an experience like this before?
No.
As much as we wish it was, that's not evidence of benevolence. Any therapist worth their salt will tell you feelings are not facts. And we have a word for when someone deliberately manipulates our emotions to serve their interests over ours. It's called abuse. Does this mean we know that all NHI contact is manipulative or harmful? Definitely not. But it is incumbent upon us as sovereign human beings to use our powers of reason, instinct, and intuition to rigorously deduce which possibilities are more likely than others based on the evidence we have. And that's how we get the wheels back on the ground. Not by chasing novelty, or settling into some comfortable narrative, or hopelessly throwing our hands in the air. The last option is probably the most tempting, but I think we need to resist it. I mean, do we think climate change is important? That's another topic riddled with lousy information, contention, and seemingly insurmountable challenges. And yet, we understand the intrinsic importance of trying to make progress anyway, because it affects everyone and everything. It's existential. The same goes for our relationship with the NHI phenomenon. It affects all of us by virtue of the fact that we all live here, and we're all human. Do we need to devote our lives to it? Maybe some of us do. Probably some of us will want to, just like there are people who've dedicated their lives to progress on climate change. But not everyone needs to become a full-time researcher. At the very least, though, we all have the responsibility to have better conversations about it and recognize that we don't have to know everything to stop spinning our wheels and start moving. So that's my introduction.
That's your introduction?
That's my introduction. That's my introduction to the conversation that I want us to have as we go forward talking about UFOs. The thing that I want to avoid is this thing that's easy to default back on, which feels safe to me, is to be like, well, I don't know. I don't know anything. I don't know. But I think there are things that I do know. I think that there are modes of behavior which are not moral in a human framework. And I think that that's fair for us to embrace and be like, I don't think it's good for someone to be abducted against their will. Some of the things that we've heard we could classify as not good for us. And maybe they're not in our interests. And I think that's okay to sort of like be transparent about that. I also think that I'm willing to say, I personally believe there's probably some multiple of types of non-human intelligences, and that some of them probably are not really interested in our well-being, and some of them maybe really, really are. But how that relationship happens, I think we should have a say in that. And I think right now we don't. And we don't because we live in an environment of information chaos and a lot of sort of lack of cohesion and self-control, both on a species level and personally. And so I want to do better. And I think we should be encouraging everyone to try to do better because it does like really, really, really matter.
I love the idea of being able to do something with what we have instead of just kind of letting it all dissolve into a kind of a type of malaise, because which is very, very easy to do. I will say, like, at the same time, just in terms of the mysterious and the things in our lives that we don't understand, like, say, death, which we wouldn't necessarily say is quote unquote good for humans. You know, it's an example of a mystery that we make meaning out of, that humans will make meaning out of every ugly thing. If we are like kind of at the height of our intelligence, we will.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely.
So it's really hard to say what is, and I'm not saying that that abuse is good. And I'm not trying to make any kind of particular argument, but just talking on the philosophical level about what is good for humans and what is ethical. It's really difficult when we don't actually understand the thing that we're looking at, because people argue all the time that maybe God doesn't care about us, or maybe whatever, like wherever we go next is nowhere and bad or whatever, you know, but like, we don't know. We don't know. So we end up trying to make positive meanings or things that will create, I guess, a more fulfilling present, because that's the only thing that exists. And we do know that. And so I can understand how we end up in this loop where, you know, we see this ugly thing, like perhaps people being abducted against their will, but people are dead against their will. You know what I mean, too.
Yeah, of course.
And that's a reality that we deal with, that we have a framework and an understanding for, and this is just one that we don't yet.
I feel like there's this big KT boundary in our, I don't know, evolution or progress as a race. And it goes back to what I was talking about with the time frame of the VASCO report. And they took pictures, digitized pictures from Palomar Observatory between 1949 and 1957. And starting around that time, with the end of the Second World War, with the development of nuclear weapons, with the Cold War, the resulting Cold War, and the genuinely horrible stuff that not only our government, but a lot of governments did during that time period until the present day, is mirrored in a lot of the perceived intent of a lot of this NHI phenomenon with respect to how they treat us. In other words, what the CIA was doing in the Middle East in the 1950s is not anything like what you or I would do to those human beings at all. It was horrible, manipulative, cruel, cold as ice, and often overtly or covertly violent. It was god-awful. It had nothing to do with intent. It had to do with power. And we were like, oh, we have power, then we're going to go do whatever the fuck we want to do. Pardon my language. And guess what? There's another group of entities who have power over us who are just like, oh, you feel love, or why are you screaming when we're going to erase your memories? It's just like, we really don't care. We're just going to take because we can. The point of this is not to just despair, I think. The point is what Jordan is saying in the idea of the Charles Ford idea. Compile the data first. Patterns will emerge. So it's not never identify patterns. It's just shut the hell up about what your predictive beliefs are, or may or may not be about what you expect to find. That is immaterial to the exercise. The exercise is get your arms around the data first. And the thing that people are forgetting, and I think the reason that we forget this is because we're taught to, is that we are, as Jordan put it, sovereign beings, and we have way more autonomy and power unto ourselves as living entities than we're led to believe. We're led to believe that we're helpless sheep who wait to be told what to do. A lot of people find comfort in that, but that's not what's really going on.
Hold on. We've got a mute. We've got a dog mute.
Yeah.
He was in the middle of the thought.
Mute.
Keep going.
Yeah. That's sort of hierarchical control. But, here comes the telepathy tapes and says, no, we can sort of demonstrate that human beings have a sort of an inheritance of abilities available to them that they either don't believe they have or were told that they don't have. We were told that we don't have. And we do, and we need to develop them. And I also think about, what was his name who we interviewed about remote viewing? Mark Turner. And at one point he goes, we're like, what does it all mean? NHIs. And he goes, I'm paraphrasing. I don't think there's anything that they can do that we can't learn how to do.
Well, one of the things that his name is Reed Summers, and one of the things that he talks about one of the things that he sort of pushes back against is this idea that that is very popular about we can never understand them. They'd be so alien to us that we can't presume to. He's like, well, why not? Assuming that they exist in this universe the way that we exist in this universe, and that they potentially evolved in this universe the way we evolved in this universe, we're not going to be so completely different from each other that we can never understand each other. He's like, with broad strokes, we can kind of understand why certain creatures do certain things, like equations of power and interest and resource and so on. And we can at least tentatively apply some of those ideas to their behaviors and see if it makes sense. And one of the things, and this is the thing that was sort of chilling to me, one of the things that makes a lot of sense is that if you want to keep a population under control, you keep them confused.
Keep them
right?
confused.
Keep them confused and divided. We're really quick to sort of blame our governments, and we're sort of responsible for all of the sort of, buffoonery around secrecy and all the things that they've done that have been sort of in bad faith and bad action. He's like, what if a lot of that stuff is orchestrated by the NHIs themselves, right?
Yeah, well, we already know, right? We already know that they're deeply misleading.
Yeah, exactly. We have evidence already from the multitudinous accounts of encounters with them that there's duplicity, that there's fabrication, that there's hallucination, that there's all kinds of things that essentially control the narrative within individuals' brains. Why not collectively? And so there's a lot of narratives that don't hold any weight if you actually scrutinize them with any amount of rigor. And one of them is the idea that non-human intelligences, whoever and whatever they are like these benevolent beings that want to help us, and that our governments are just getting in the way and they're making it everything bad. It's like, that might not be it, you know? And how useful would it be to any sort of other group of non-human beings who want to maintain the sort of power dynamic that exists to keep us thinking that?
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason that I kind of bristle at the idea of trying to like pin something as good or bad or ethical or not when it comes to this big mystery, because it does feel like that's really not the point. I think it reminds me immediately of that I think it was when we were talking to, it was Mike Cleland, right? The owl guy, that was his name.
Yes.
Yeah. The owl guy, I love it.
I don't know if I brought this up in the interview with him. I think I did, but he had talked about it at one point with Kelly Chase. I think it was Mac Tony's idea of a cat and a string. And like if something is moving a string and the cat just thinks this string is pure magic or something from God or whatever, like a human playing with a cat is not really good or bad necessarily. You know what I mean? If the cat is convinced the string is going to kill its family, like the human doesn't even have to intend that for it to be a horrible, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a level of just like wanting more truth and recognizing that kindness and love still tend to seem like the only answer. To me, it feels like the only answer.
Oh,
if
absolutely.
the person with the string has kindness and love, then that is better for the cat. And if the cat has kindness and love, then the cat and all the other cats are more likely to maybe understand the string. That's where I'm at. You know what I mean?
Also say,
that's all
I would
I've
also
got.
say it's important for us to understand that love is simple, but it's also it's also very complex in its execution. Like it takes a level of, like, the more sophisticated you are, the more sophisticated your love ought to be. And I think that this is a really great, like, I've been thinking about this in terms of like parent-child relationships, where when you're raising a child, you exert an enormous amount of authority and control and manipulation, frankly, in like raising the child, trying to like help them be a good human. And at a certain point, they reach a level where they can start communicating with you as an adult. And then the boundary starts to begin between, you're like, I'm no longer parenting you. I am now a peer. I'm not saying that like NHIs are our parents. I'm saying that there are different kinds of relationships that need to be evaluated. And that, you know, there are some abusive relationships where there needs to be distance before anything can heal and repair. There are certain kinds of relationships that are hostile, and you have to essentially take up arms in the name of love. So there are all kinds of relationships, and identifying what kind of your relationship you're in is a big part of this process, which is why I'm really riffing on Reed here, but basically saying, like, we've got to figure out what this relationship is, and that requires honesty within our own communities, right? So he's like very, very big on like, disclosure. If we can make it happen, let's do it. Like, maybe it's possible, maybe it's not. Like, there's a lot of that's a big, thorny, complicated issue, but like, we need to be bringing as many people to bear as possible and trying to band together to uncover this thing as much as we can, knowing that we'll never get the whole truth, because that's not how life works. You never get to have perfect understanding before you make a decision. You just do the best you can. You make the best decision you can, and then you recalibrate. You try again. But it's vital for us to consider this as a responsibility, not thinking of NHIs as all good or all bad or anything. They exist. Yeah. There is a relationship there, and we need to understand that relationship. And right now we don't. Collectively, we certainly don't. And that there may be people who do. And then there are people who are aware that there's something going on, but they don't really understand it at all. And then there's lots and lots of people who aren't even thinking about it, you know? But they are still subject to the interventions by the very things that we're talking about. So it's not, you know, everybody is affected whether or not they are thinking about it, if that makes sense.
Well, and Jordan, even the people who may feel that they have a certain amount of understanding, like, to use your parent-child metaphor, that person may understand the relationship that they have with their parents and not understand all relationships with all parents.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
The idea that there could be a vast diversity of relationships here versus it just being like, oh, a benevolent race and
Yeah.
us. It's like,
Yeah.
look at our race.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a
Yeah.
big spread.
This is my point. Is that every time we talk about fairy lights that want to lead you into the marsh or whatever, it's like how, your posture toward that also works in abusive relationships. Like your discernment is always important. So we don't need spooky cloak and dagger NHI, gray aliens manipulating us to already know and see quite plainly what we've done to each other. So that
Absolutely.
if someone NHI does want to come in and just sort of take advantage of the situation, how hard is it? It's not
Can't
hard.
be that hard.
Oh, no,
I mean,
it's
think
certainly
about
can't.
the
And
way
then especially when our own
yeah.
governments are like, they don't exist. You're crazy. Why are you so crazy? So on an individual level, we're like, I don't even want to go there. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think that I'm going crazy. On a collective level, we're like, I am not even going to sit in the same room with that crowd because they're nuts. I don't want anybody to think I'm nuts.
Too late, Tom.
I don't mean me. I'm nuts.
One of my deepest fears around like AI technology and kind of human manipulation is sort of this idea of like I've always had this image in my mind, just as a filmmaker. What is it? First to be like, AI is just regurgitating things, but eventually, if say, like, we continue to advance biotech and we get to a point where you can hook a human being up to a machine and understand what will make them cry, what would make them feel like deep emotion, and just hit all of those notes in a song, just like hack that system. It does actually make me feel very uncomfortable to think that maybe the only barometer I've ever known how to use might actually be hackable by NHI. Whether it's AI or it's aliens, it freaks me out to think that I could be manipulated to feel what I grew up understanding was God, honestly, like some form of like God's hand in my life. We called it the spirit in like the Mormon community growing up, that you were feeling the spirit if you felt motivated, usually to do something beautiful or that you felt you'd seen something beautiful. Other people just call it awe. But the idea that might not be trustable, what do you do with that? That's my question for both of you. Like, what do we do if we understand that we can be manipulated to feel love by a UAP?
I think this opens up a pretty important conversation about what, like, at the deeper levels, our consciousness really is. Because I believe, and I have believed since I was pretty young, actually, that insofar as there's such a thing as spirit, that it operates at a level that is precursor to emotion. So we are capable of understanding deeply truth prior to emotion. So emotion will happen in all kinds of contexts. And emotion can be a really great signal for things. It's not that it's always wrong, but that it's not necessarily always founded on being correct. Like this is going to be a little more esoteric because I also grew up in the LDS faith community and still part of it. And one of the things that always bothered me is that when people equated tearing up or feeling emotional with feeling the spirit. And it's not the same thing. And it's crucial to understand that it's not the same thing, or you will think that every single time you feel emotional, you must be feeling the truth with the capital T. And that's just not how it works. And I think it's very evident that that's not how it works across all kinds of human domains and endeavors, not just in the spiritual and religious context. The fact that like there might be really sophisticated manipulation going on that like you wouldn't know about, I think that we are capable of getting to a place where we can know, where we can be in a situation where we are being directly like wired to the brain, emotionally manipulated and feeling all the feelings and know this is not real. This is my brain, my neurochemistry, my body being manipulated by another party who may not have my interests at heart, and that we can know that and respond accordingly. This isn't about making enemies. This isn't about being in a defensive posture. This is about understanding our birthright and who we are.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm going to be thinking about this for a long time because it's something that you hear not just with UAP, but you hear it with NDE, like near-death experiences as well.
Yeah.
Like people feeling this overwhelming sense of love. And granted, I'm talking about the positive side of potential emotional manipulation, mostly just because those are the sorts of things you hope to be able to trust. But I hear you completely in what you're saying, that like we hack each other's systems all the time. So
Yeah, we do.
what is deeper than those feelings? And there is a type of knowing that I do think goes deeper than emotion, for sure. That's beautiful.
I have a take. It may take too long. It may be too deep for the episode.
I can't wait.
I'll be quick about it. Mallory, you talk about meditation and becoming the witness. I've talked about
Right.
meditation and becoming the observer. I believe in non-dualism. That is to say that consciousness, universal consciousness, is the ground of all being. Instead of consciousness being local, where it's created at birth and terminated by death, I believe that we are vessels for a universal consciousness. Christians or Jewish people can call it I am. Hindus call it Brahman, whatever you want to call it. And the way that you can get to that is through ego dissolution. Our ego identities are largely processes made up by our bodies that it's called like interoceptive inference or prediction, where they make predictive models. Or you breathe and you have a heartbeat, so you assume a self, and the self that we assume, I like this kind of music or whatever. That is the sort of 3D navigator, but there is a you inside of you. Right. And the you inside of you, once you sort of recognize that observer or witness, then parent binaries start to collapse, and emotions still crop up because they always will,
Sure.
but they're almost more like biological processes. It's the difference between saying I am angry and I'm feeling angry. If you are angry, then you just embody anger. If you feel angry, you notice a process, but it's like a cloud
Right.
in the sky. It's ephemeral. All you do is recognize it, and you're not attached. And we live in a society that is a narcissist factory. So the closer we can get to that kind of ego dissolution, it's not annihilation. It's just more just like, hey, there's more going on. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more that's available to us.
Yeah, I would actually say that it's the opposite of annihilation. I think it's the opposite of annihilation. I think it's freedom, actually.
I think you don't lose yourself either. You lose yourself in the sense that, and this is why it's terrifying, is that
You lose all the
There's a-
stories.
yeah, well, there's a part of your ego, there's a part of your sense of self that thinks that it's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It thinks that
Right.
it is you. And I think this is why a lot of meditation teachers and a lot of, spiritual masters talk about waking up.
Yes,
Sam Harris
absolutely.
talks about
Yep.
waking up, and that man is a delusional atheist, but whatever.
Yeah.
No, he's right about a lot of stuff. I love it. I love Sam Harris. I just can't listen to him anymore. But his app is called Waking Up, and I love that. I love what he's doing, and what a lot of people are saying when they talk about that is that you become more conscious. You become more aware. And I think we fear that sort of loss of self, quote unquote, or that annihilation, quote unquote, because we're really talking about one very small, very frightened aspect of our personalities that thinks that it's the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And as soon as we let that part go and let that little small part get, quote unquote, annihilated or let go of and in the wash, we sort of come into ourselves and we're like, oh, this is what I am. And it's like, and it's expansive, and it's not forgotten anything. It hasn't even forgotten the little part that was so afraid of that awakening.
Yeah.
That's important to be reminded of, and important to sort of communicate, because we are so afraid. We're so afraid of losing ourselves because we have been brought up in this world that is, I love that, a narcissist factory. Everything is sort of angled toward making us feel like we're in competition over everything.
Which is
and that
silly.
we have to earn our right to exist. And the thing is that it's like, it makes sense. Like, we evolved in a place where you could be eaten by any number of things, and starvation was always right around the corner. And so, like, there's a purpose for that little guy who wants to go out and hunt and gather. And then there's a purpose for the Zen master in all of us who can wake up to the reality of our true selves.
And when you do that, you get ethical clarity, and morality becomes recognition and not responsibility, because you already know that the other is you. Any harm to
Right.
another is self-harm. Do unto
Violence.
others as you would do. It's right. So it actually, a lot of stuff becomes a lot easier, and a lot of crooked paths are made straight. Okay.
I have a friend of a friend who sometimes says, in terms of surrendering things or losing things, if you could lose it, then it wasn't everything. You know, like that.
Yeah.
It clearly wasn't everything if you could lose it. There's always something left.
I want to tell a quick anecdote. Oh, go ahead.
Please. No, I have.
I just
have
wanted-
I have another question I'll ask you guys next time about this particular thing because I'll need.
Will you remember it?
I never forget it. I think about it every day.
Just
But tell
wanna
us your anecdote.
Well, we were talking about crazy, and I don't want to be crazy, and I don't want to be seen as being crazy. And Jordan's like, you already are, and I'm like, yes, I know. So, a man walked into a psychiatrist's office covered naked, except he was wrapped in saran wrap and cellophane. And the psychiatrist took one look at him and said, "Well, I can clearly see your nuts."
You brought this up like you said it was an anecdote, but
Yes.
so I wasn't prepared.
That really
for the fact
happened.
that it
Is
was
what
a-
I'm trying to say. It really happened. It's one of
To
Christ's
whom?
parables.
I can
little
clearly
known.
See your nuts.
Little.
Fellers over here like, I had a serious question, but I'll make way for your anecdote.
No, I loved it.
Couple of quick reminders before you go. First off, if you haven't left a rating on your platform of choice, please do that. One of the first things people look at when they're judging a show by its cover is the number of ratings it has. So if you dig what we're doing, show it with stars. Also, in today's epilogue, we discuss the etymological history of our names, one of Mal's unique professional hazards, and her existential fear of losing communal identities in whatever collective consciousness turns out to be. If you want to hear it, go to godsghostsufos.com or find the link in the description. See you next week, friends.